my mom taught me a long time ago. She said, service to others emancipates humanity from the dungeon of themselves. That if you want to ever tap into the power of what it means to truly understand what joy is, she said, serve others. Because in that process, you discover who you are. Because when you want to tap into the power of joy, and you can be humble and put others above self, he said, my son, this world will be a better place.
Welcome back to Innovate or Evaporate. This is your host, Toph Day. Today we have Manny Ohonme on the podcast with us. This is going to be an insane story. Manny is setting out to put shoes on 600 million people across the planet that do not have shoes today. And that results in 1.5 billion foot illnesses, foot conditions that can be quite catastrophic that we'll get into later. So we're going to save some of that wild stuff for a little bit later, Manny. But welcome to the show. Man. So excited to have you here.
Oh, Toph, thanks for having me, man. Way to represent, man. I love you. I love your digs, man. Representing. I love that.
Thank you so much. We had the honor of meeting last year at Rally, right? So about just a little over a year ago, absolutely. I think we met. And I was so taken away by your story, and just chatting a few minutes ago here before we started the podcast today. I learned so much more about you that I didn't know. Just incredible story. So we got to go back in time for a second, right? So you grew up in Nigeria, and you played basketball, and you woke up one day and said, I'm going to go play basketball in the States, but you were told you couldn't do it. Let's talk about that for a second.
It's amazing before I even get there. It's funny, I grew up in Nigeria. At the age of 9, if you ever watch Discovery Channel, you see these kids that used to carry baskets in their heads, go sell things in the streets of Africa. That used to be me. I used to sell water and soft drinks in the street of Lagos to athletes to be hydrated, play sports by where I used to live. And one day when I was 9 years old, I went to go help my mom sell water and Coca-Cola and Fanta and all this stuff at a park. There was this group of missionaries that came to Nigeria to come teach African people how to play sports. It's crazy in my country, everything does round and bounce, we kick them. But this one, they were using their hands. I was really confused what's going on, but I learned later on it's called basketball. It's got these orange balls, and these kids were playing, having so much fun. So I put my basket of water and soft drinks down as I was watching. So I want to join them. So I try to kind of go in, and they shoot me away because they thought I was a street merchant, a street kid. I didn't belong. So I was really disappointed standing in the corner watching these kids having fun, being taught by these Americans, and how Providence would have when the balls rolled by where I was standing, and I had a decision to make. And I grabbed the ball, I could throw it in and keep minding my business, or I can try and sneak in.
Yep.
And see if anybody really cared.
Yes.
And guess what I did? I snuck in.
Love it.
And I started dribbling the ball, passing the ball, and not even a few minutes after I started doing this missionary called Dave from Wisconsin, and he said, we're going to have a shooting competition. And he said the prize for the winner is going to be a new pair of tennis shoes. The place went nuts, crazy. Everybody was screaming, pick me, pick me, pick me. I was one of the few kids that got picked that day. I never played basketball in my life, but I truly believe angels that day.
Yes.
Because the shot I took in the ugliest shot in the world, man, right to the net. And this missionary called me to the front, and I presented a brand new pair of shoes. I became the first person, not just in my family, but my entire community to own a pair of shoes. It was pretty wild and crazy.
How old were you?
I was 9 years old.
9 years old.
And all I wanted to do was run home. And right before I took off, this missionary grabbed by my shoulders. And he said, son, just because all you see around you is poverty doesn't mean the God of the universe has forgotten about you. Son, you keep dreaming and keep dreaming big. You know, Toph, he could have told me that day the sky was green, I would have believed him.
Yeah.
You know, because after he finished speaking, I took off. I ran so fast, I forgot my basket of soft drinks again. Until I showed up at home, my mom looked at me, son, where's my water? I said, Mama, check out my shoes. And she was so excited for me. About 2 minutes later, Toph said, son, you better go bring my water back. I need Jesus. And I said, so I ran so fast there praying. And that basket better be there. Mama meant what she said, but it was there. Crazy Toph, for the next probably week or two, every time I show up at that park, I put the shoes on my neck because an American guy gave me those shoes. I didn't want to get them dirty. I was like, this was like a car, because when you live in my neighborhood when people live on less than $1 a day, a pair of tennis shoes like that is like a Mercedes Benz to us.
Yeah.
So it was something else. It was one of the most prized possessions I ever had. So I started playing basketball because my home life was somewhat tough. My father struggled a little bit with alcohol, a bunch of unique types of addiction. And so when things would get crazy at my house, guess where I showed up at the basketball court.
Yep.
And it was so crazy, Toph. I mean, sometimes I'll go to my mom because things were very difficult. And I said, Mom, why do we have to live so poor? You know, I mean, I know you're hustling, you're doing all this stuff. And I said, I mean, you pray to this God. Does this God even exist? And my mom was such a wise woman. And she would take me by this little window by my house. You know, we live in this 2-bedroom, 15 of us live in this house. And she said, son, look outside and tell me what you see. And I look outside, I said, Mom, I see trees. And she said, son, no, look much higher and tell me what you see. And I said, Mom, I see birds. And she said, son, no, look much higher and tell me what you see. I said, Mom, I see the clouds. And she said, do you ever wonder why God created the sky so high? And I said, I don't know, Mama. And she would say, so poor boys like you can dream real high. He said, never make an excuse for life. He said, just because today may be a crappy day and I may not be able to provide all that you need doesn't mean there's not a plan or purpose for your life. You say, you keep dreaming. Mama has a way of recentering me whenever I get my mind focused on all the other things. So basketball became my escape. I started playing ball and I got better each year. And at the end of my junior year, years later, I went to my coach. I said, Coach, you know, when I become a senior, when I graduate, I think I'm good enough. I want to go play basketball in America. And he laughed at me. He said, son, you're not fast enough, you're not big enough, you're not good enough. I joke around to that. I said, he's one of the greatest encouragers I've ever met. But he said, man, you got courage. He said, you came to ask me. And because you got to realize the persona of this gentleman, he was a coach of one of the greatest basketball players that ever lived in the continent of Africa called Hakeem Olajuwon. And he said,
he grew up in your same town?
I mean, he grew up in Lagos, Lagos, and you know, his brother and I went to school together. And he said, you know, like, he said, I don't know if anybody ever going to give you a scholarship, but you know, I'm willing to try. He said, I'm going to give you names of schools in America. I want you to write them letters. In those days, we didn't have any of these portals or recruiting sites or nothing.
Yes.
And
what year was this? When your junior, senior year?
This was 1980, about 1986.
Okay.
Because I graduated in '87.
Yep.
And he said, so I wrote letters. I wrote letters to school and how Providence would have it, I have 5 scholarship interest in offers from schools in the United States. But I didn't know much about America. So growing up in Nigeria in those days, there was no Bing, there was no Google, there was nothing. You know, so he said, you know, I said, I'll do what every major Nigerian boy would do. So I laid out those schools on the table in my house. And I said, I'll pick the school with the best looking brochure. Great market research.
It all comes
right?
back to marketing, right?
You know, so I picked the University of North Dakota in Lake Region. And until I showed up there, man, I said, I've done something wrong to
A little
God,
chilly.
man. I said, my gosh, I'm going to die. African people should not live in North Dakota, man. It's like, but it was the best decision of my life because I ended up meeting my future bride, Tracy, which I've now been married to for over 32 years. And, you know, I went there for a couple years, transferred to Concordia, Minnesota, because my heart was, I wanted to go study international business, international relations, because I used to grow up tough every morning, and I'll say, God, give me 001. It means it's okay if you don't give me breakfast or lunch, but at least give me supper so I can make it to the next day. I know you look at me today, you said, there's not a chance this brother's missed a meal his entire life, you know, but the reality of my life was so different. You know, so I thought I was going to go do that. And so after I finished there, I went to North Dakota State to go get my master's and combine agricultural economics, applied economics, and then supply chain. Because I wanted to understand the intricacies of what it takes to create and produce food, market food, and logistically transport food. You know, so I was a good student. I was probably one of the top 2, 3 in the country. And I was, after I finished my grad school, I was invited to this conference in San Diego. Actually, right there when I landed in San Diego, I said, God, why wasn't this one of my options? You know what I'm saying? You know, but that's a separate story. You know, but
It's a gorgeous town.
you know, but man, amazing place. And I met this young man called Patrick. Actually, turned out to be my future employer. He approached me. He said, you know, like I knew you must be an amazing student, a supply chain kid. I'd love to fly to Charlotte. I said, where's Charlotte? I said, why are you asking me? I said, well, the last time I didn't ask that question, I showed up in North Dakota. You know what I'm saying? So he offered me a job. He flew me to Charlotte to this amazing supply chain software company, the amazing startups he was starting with. I came in as a product manager. And that became my journey in the software business. And a few years later, that company got acquired. And
Now, was this in the early 90s,
this
mid 90s?
This was actually in the 95. Is when I
95?
joined them. Yeah.
Yep.
And left there, joined another company out of New York, and then came back to Charlotte. Joined another startup company there. But in my journey through this process, actually living the first company while I was working with them, trying to transition, my father got really sick because of this choice to abuse alcohol. Some of those other things caught up to him. It was diagnosed as cirrhosis of the liver. Eventually led to my father passing away. So I had to go back to Nigeria to go bury my dad. And I remember showing up at my home. It was so hard I couldn't even use the bathroom of my own house. I had to go across the street to the park where I used to sell soft drinks and water. And as I came out of this place and I looked on the horizon and I saw these children just like me, many of them didn't have shoes. Many of them didn't have hope. And that's when the thought came to my mind that, do you remember when that missionary gave you a pair of shoes? What if we can start coming and providing shoes to kids like this and also inspire them to dream the dream? In that quest, I started doing some research. I learned that over 300 million kids in Africa alone, just children, not adults, wake up each day with no shoes on their feet. At that time, I didn't even realize the vastness that Africa had, almost over 1 billion people in population.
Yeah.
But for 300 million kids not to have shoes, then I learned that over 1.5 billion with a B were infected with the disease of the poor. That's called neglected tropical disease. Many of them foodborne related because they didn't have proper access to footwear. I was like, this is an injustice. This is something that somebody ought to do something about. I always joke around and I said, be careful when you say somebody, because that finger you point, there's another one pointing right back to you. You may be the
That's
one.
right.
So at that time I didn't realize that was going to be me. Fast forward, 5 years later, I came back to America. My wife and I started thinking through, what would it take for us to go do something to help address and be the face and the voice for kids and children all across the world that didn't have shoes. So in 2003, we both stepped out, myself out of the software business, her out of the corporate travel business, to start this nonprofit called Samaritan's Feet, with a vision to go put shoes in the feet of 10 million people across the globe. Because we said, if we're going to do something, we want to be so audacious.
Right.
That if we can accomplish that, come on, man, we can't take credit for it.
Right.
And it was so amazing. We started that journey, and that journey actually brought me through Indiana. Because when we were trying to figure out how do we put a face and create mass adoption across the United States, we said, who can help us craft and tell a story and help put a face to our cause so people can actually embark and just join us on this mission? Well, it turned out that actually I was in New York with a friend of mine that lived in Indianapolis, who actually used to do some work with Coach Dungy on the sports side. And he and I were there with this artist to kind of do some work, and how Providence would have, I got a chance to actually connect with Maya Angelou, who at an event that the Gabarin Foundation was honoring her for a Lifetime Achievement Award. And she asked me what I did. I said, I'm a professional foot washer. I go around the world and wash the feet of the poor and give them shoes and inspire young children to dream big dreams. I said, that reminds me of somebody. And later on, she said, man, that's somebody. You just called his name flippantly. I said, he reminds me of Martin. I said, who is Martin? He was talking about Martin Luther King Jr. I'm like, man, that's my hero.
Right.
And he said, you know why I worked for Martin? I said, no, ma'am. She said, because he was willing to be the face and the voice for children and people that didn't have voices. He said, Emmanuel, because that's my name, everybody calls him Manny. He said, Emmanuel, whatever you do, I want to challenge you to be courageous, to go be the face and the voice for people with no shoes across the globe. He was like, she just put some inflation in my balloon to make me feel like I could fly.
Right.
And I went home to my hotel that day with my marketing guy, and I said, what is something courageous we could do, just like Dr. Angelou just charged us and inspired us to go do? We started talking about, well, what if we can get a coach, a Division I basketball coach, to help us coach a game on national TV with no shoes? And that letter, he said, there's a guy in Indianapolis called Ron Hunter. He was the head basketball coach at IUPUI. And I said, what is IUPUI? It's like he said, it's actually got a school that's got over 30,000 students. I said, I've never heard of him. He said, let's call him. And so we called them. I mean, I learned one lesson that I don't.
I remember when this happened.
And it's
I didn't
crazy.
realize that was the connection.
That's part. It's crazy. Ron decided to raise his hands. I remember flying down to his office, and right behind was the biggest poster of Dr. King I've ever seen. And I said, you know that man? He said, Manny, I bought the picture, cut to the chase. What do you want me to do for you? I said, Coach, I want you to help me coach again with no shoes, and help me raise 40,000 shoes in honor of his 40th anniversary. And he looked at me stone cold. He said, Manny, you're crazy. He said, I think I'll invite you here. I like you. I'll help you raise maybe 500 or 1,000 pairs of shoes. I said, Coach, with all due respect, with 1,000 or 2,000 shoes, you don't need God. But with 40,000 shoes, you're going to need a God that's big. And he said, Manny, you're really crazy. So I said, Coach, I'm not asking you what you can or can't do. All I'm asking you is to just say yes and see what happens with your obedience. Right. It was crazy tough because he picked a day. It was going to be the 24th of January, 2008. By game time that day, we raised 110,000 shoes. ABC News made him Person of the Week. By the end of that year, we raised 200 and something thousand pairs of shoes that ABC News made him Person of the Year. Because of that, NCAA invited me to come present him an award at the Final Four in San Antonio that year. And guess who was the host of that event that we're going to present the award to? It was Ernie Johnson. And Ernie Johnson said, I remember when this was breaking out and everybody, you know, was calling in and contributing shoes. And he said, what can I do to help you? I said, you're Ernie Johnson, you can do whatever you want. Right. So he said, well, I would love to see if I can get Turner to get engaged in this. So he called me about 7 days later. You could have thought Ernie Johnson just won a lottery. He said, man, you won't believe this. Turner wants me to have you on the show on Mother's Day. And me, Charles Barkley, and Candace, we're going to all go barefoot. And we're going to have you, we want you to talk about our mission. So I went on there. I thought he was goofing around. So he called me and said, this is going to be the day. Drove down to Atlanta from Charlotte. And I was on the show. They were all barefoot. They got those set up that Adidas and Nike and all these folks contributed over 20,000 shoes, and they gave us a significant contribution. But it was so cool. One of Kenny Smith's person was actually in the audience that day. And after I finished sharing my story, he said, Manny, are you for real? I said, yes, I am. He said, Manny, I think I can help you get 1 million shoes. I said, don't tease me.
Don't tease me.
And he said, Manny, I'm actually working with a couple of NBA players that's about to launch a new footwear that was going to be launched exclusively through, at that time, actually Sears and Kmart. But we've been looking for a cause. But when I heard you open your mouth, started talking about what you're called to do and how you are called, I had to help you. Crazy. Because of that, Sears ended up donating 1.3 million pairs of shoes to kick off this amazing global launch of this product that automatically puts Samaritan's feet on the map because Ron Hunter went barefoot. Right. Somebody's obedience created ripple effect because a guy came to Africa 40-some years ago to provide a pair of shoes to an African kid that said yes. Ron said yes. Ernie said yes. And all of a sudden this ripple effect came, and I said, well, this is so crazy. So I chose to go walk barefoot from Charlotte to Atlanta. Actually, Ernie Johnson came and helped me finish up because we started at the Speedway in Charlotte. We ended up actually in Atlanta. That began a whole different thing.
Hang on, you didn't tell me that. You walked from Charlotte to Atlanta?
Charlotte to Atlanta, barefoot. For 2 weeks. I didn't think 300 miles was that long as I started that journey until my podiatrist saw me every single day. He said, Manny, you're going to destroy your feet. And I looked him in the eye. I said, yes. I lost about 2 or 3 nails, toenails, and a few puncture here and there. And every day that they'll soak my feet and try and treat it because of some of this stuff so I don't have infection. I said, I get to do this for 2 weeks. But there's over 1 billion people around the world that this is their reality. That me doing this will actually help create awareness for this cause. Because of that, one of the shoe companies that we actually partner with actually stepped up because the head of social responsibility was walking with me that time. They ended up donating 1 million pairs of shoes because of that, and said, Manny, you must be really crazy, you really believe in this. I said, a little bit of both, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, but it created an amazing thing. So you fast forward, doing all this, So much has happened. We became one of the official charities of the NCAA at the Final Fours every year, where we get athletes, coaches, because of Run Hunter's Barefoot movement, galvanized coaches like at that time Brad Stevens at Butler. At that time you've got Calipari at Kentucky, eventually now Arkansas became, using that platform of service to engage their athletes and their community to be able to actually impact. Corporations come along and use us as a calling card through their CSR effort to provide shoes for Title I schools in their community, Boys and Girls Club, homeless shelters, different things, because they provided the volunteers that came. Because when they want to sponsor the shoes for an entire school, they have to bring their staff along because they want to be able to model what it means to truly be servant leaders and live out their brand promise that say they care. So we became a conduit to help them live out that particular virtue and part of their core value. So that's became what we're doing. So fast forward, 2023 came. Our vision was to serve 10 million. We started the first one that we distributed in Cape Town, South Africa. We went back to Cape Town, South Africa, October 2023 to go serve our 10 million person. It's amazing how things were, and as we were doing this, we started as we were because we chose a very unique way to distribute our shoes. When we come into a community or village or a shelter or whatever it is, or a school, before the kids actually get the shoes, we get to humble ourselves and wash the feet of every recipient. If they have wound, we bandage their wound. We get to talk to them. We get to know what their names are, what their dreams are, and we get to connect them to the possibilities of what could be. Some of them want to be doctors, lawyers, engineers, police officers, and it's ironic sometimes the people serving them, those are the profession that they are.
Right.
They get to invite them to come, shadow them on their jobs. They get to maybe even provide scholarships for them to do amazing things. Never in my wildest dream did I ever think that me providing shoes or somebody giving a shoe will create a global movement that's now served, by the end of this year, will serve 12 million people in about 113 countries, 670 U.S. cities and communities, because somebody came to Africa. So it's been just so crazy.
So you went from 0 to 12 million shoes in, what was it, a 10-year?
About a 20-year
20-year
span.
span.
And now to think about that, we knew just giving shoes couldn't solve this problem at scale.
Yeah.
Because charity can't solve this long term to be sustainable. So we knew we had to employ some market-based solution, ability to be able to create a product and a business that can generate profit so we can actually solve this problem on a greater scale.
Now we're going to head into what you're doing now, right? So this is one of the most beautiful, elegant, easy to visualize, understand, definitionally of what impact investing can be, right? It's social impact businesses, impact investing. So now you over the last couple of years here, a few years, you move into, I'm going to start production, and you have a whole vision of Shoepreneurs and how you scale this now to go from 12 million. You went from 0 to 1,000 to 40,000 to millions to 12 million. Now how do you go to 600 million?
Well, it took us 20 years to distribute,
This is going to be the hockey stick,
the
old proverbial hockey stick?
It's exactly it, because turf, it took us 20 years to serve over 10 million people. Our factory that we just opened in Ghana now has capacity to manufacture 5 million shoes in 1 year. Because now we get the chance to move our value chain closest to the place where the needs is the greatest.
Well, now real quick, so before we jump into that part, how did you get that business set up? How did you get the funding? How did you pick the location? How did that come about?
Yeah, because I think we knew we had to be located in West Africa as the gateway for our first thing. Even though I'm from Nigeria, we'd have loved to be able to do this in Nigeria, but we chose Ghana. First, because of the proximity and access to power and access to water. So we chose Akosombo, which is actually in the Volta region, which is one of the biggest man-made lakes in that region of Western Africa. We knew Ghana was pro-business because it's, AFTA was moving the Africa Free Trade, it was moving the their particular headquarters to West Africa, located and domiciled there in Ghana. Also because I also serve as a secondary board level type of role that I play. I serve as chair of the board for one of the largest rural healthcare systems in America called Sanford Health in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is part of our, our World Clinic portfolio of business where we use our best practice to go help work with healthcare systems in the developing world, establish clinics, establish hospitals, sometimes partner strategically with them to be able to elevate, no pun intended, elevate the profile and the service to be able to extend life and health of those populations in those countries. So Ghana is one of those key countries that Sanford was involved in. So I got the chance to work with our Sanford partner there, with at that time Samaritan's Feet, and then with our new venture, World Shoe, to be able to see, can we use footwear as an intervention in affecting some of the health-related issues that's going on in some of this country, and how can our shoe potentially, in partnership with their Ministry of Health, help improve, adoption rate of some of the key vaccines that they were trying to distribute, like HPV or some chemotherapy around deworming pills that they want to provide, because many of these children or their parents just didn't believe in that. They needed somebody they could trust, so they could trust us. So many of them, they want to take this. If you see some of these deworming pills, they look like horse pills, but we say, hey, if you come to school, we'll provide you footwear if you allow us to be able to actually help treat you so you don't have all these worms in your system. So it was pretty amazing to see the adoption rate. The kids want to go to school, the kids wanted shoes, and then because of that, we were able to also provide them this amazing intervention to help save their life. And we saw how successful that was. Typically when the Ministry of Health wants to do things like that, they will bring an army of people, but because of our model, our wash and wear model, we simplify the process where we teach hygiene. We provide a health station that allows them to be able to provide, if it's HPV vaccines or the deworming pills or whatever type of health intervention that they need to receive, then they go through a wash station that allows us to wash their feet, help to interact with them, and then we distribute the shoes. So Ghana became a very strategic location for us. And then we found an investor that cared about social impact, that cared about using business for good, but looking for a platform that the impact will be far greater than the investment itself. Yep. And so we got him to actually invest a catalytic funding about $20 million, actually over $20 million, into us establishing a factory in West Africa, specifically in Ghana, that actually that was commissioned to be able to help foster and grow economic development, create jobs, create that pathway to economic prosperity for people, but also produce a global health product that can actually be a fight against neglected tropical disease. So it was a quadruple bottom line opportunity for us, right. And we were able to assemble an amazing team of people, industry veteran from the shoe business, from Nike, Adidas, Puma, even Crocs, that joined our team to be able to go build this next generation, next level footwear. And it's amazing. We've now designed world-class footwear that allows us to be able to fight this problem, because we've created a patent-pending formulation that allows our shoes to actually be able to have an organic antimicrobial in the shoe to fight many of these kind of diseases. So hospitals can actually use our stuff to keep a bunch of infection and bacteria come into their sanitized environment. Yep. And then also it's eco-friendly, so it's got a biodegradation accelerant that allows us, at the end of the shelf life, typically plastic or rubber-based stuff that you bury in the ground takes thousands of years to decompose. Yep. But because of the acceleration that's in there to the biodegradation piece, the eco-friendly nature, within 5 years, it tracks bacteria that actually eats away the bacteria, and then the foam, EVA foam, biodegrades. So it's amazing to see what's transpired through that. So we went from, like you said, 0 to 1 to 1,000 to 40,000 to 100-some thousand to like now 12 million by the end of this year, to now being able to actually have a model that allows us not just to have factory just in Ghana with a vision to replicate this in Eastern Africa, in Southern Africa, in Central and Northern Africa, and one day in different parts of the world. So we can empower those that needs the most empowerment. And then through that process, create a whole new level of extended supply chains of developing the next generation. So shoepreneurs that could be trained as part of this accelerators that we can provide startup funding, capital for, to be able to procure the inventory so they can become future franchise operators for us and distributors of our footwear.
I think that is so amazing, right? So this story just blows my mind. It is so amazing. Now that you're taking this foundational core business and your vision is to now spawn off all these other businesses, these shoepreneurs who can become distributors and continue to take that into all corners of the world. So how does that work? So folks that are listening out there, how can they get involved to help get those shoepreneurs off the ground?
Absolutely.
How much money do they need, and how do they?
Exactly. For as little as $10,000, we can set up a shoepreneur to start their business, to train them in the product knowledge of our, how do they better market, how do they set up the core, blocking and tackling of what it takes to operate their business with the tools. So our goal is we want to be able to assemble an accelerator of 100 within the first cohort, raise the first $1 million to be able to set them up so they can go be distributors for key geographies in some of the key target areas that we got. Keep them tethered so we can keep ensuring that we're learning from them, they're learning from us, so all that kind of stuff. They're connected, become an extension of our sales team, so we want to invest in them as much as they invest in their life in us. But for us, it's actually delivering on the promise of Africa, because Africa doesn't need any more aid, right? We talk about the importance of the development of Africa being built on the foundation of trade. To do that, you have to equip, resource, empower the engine that can help propagate this growth that Africa can deliver, which is this young population and these amazing women that understand the power of commerce, but not just in the form of a micro type of finance, but more of a substantial business that we can actually go say, we want to set you up as a distributor for our shoe in Nairobi. We'll set you as a distributor for a shoe. It's somewhere in Kampala, Uganda, in Lagos, Nigeria, in Accra, Ghana, or maybe some of the smaller locations all across the continent in Egypt. All of a sudden, you've got an army of people, either through e-commerce, maybe through a brick and mortar, maybe through a layer marketing, direct kind of sales type of process, where we're selling directly to hospitals and schools and providing shoes for teachers, providing shoes for healthcare workers, providing shoes for people in the hospitality business. This becomes our sales and our foot soldiers that go out and help build our brand, tell our story. In that process, they get elevated to more middle class folks, even upper, that can transform
the ripple
communities.
Effect
It's unbelievable.
Infinite.
So that's how we want to do it. So for us, you can do that, or you can also say, I want to help adopt a school, somewhere in an impoverished community in the United States or somewhere in Africa or whatever it is. You can also purchase that. Or I'm a retail partner, like a Finish Line or like a Dick's or like a Shields, whatever, a Carnival shoes. I want to be able to provide this type of footwear that has this amazing story, that's manufactured in Africa, made for the world with an innovation that's pretty powerful, fashion-forward footwear that's solving a major global problem, but also I can build a story around that. That's all these guys are looking for differentiate. This is a story that checks all the right boxes for us. And so the people can help us in different types of ways like that.
So have you launched any shoepreneurs yet?
Yeah, we actually in the process, we're trying to actually raise the first $1 million to go set up the first 100 of them.
So if someone's interested in participating with that, what should they do? They reach out to Samaritan's Feet?
They
reach
out, actually, you guys should reach out to us through World Shoe.
Through World Shoe.
To World Shoe. And
is that a website?
Yes, they go to www.theworldshoe.com.
Theworldshoe.com.
And then they can let us know that they're interested in that. And then we've actually, we have a specific Africa domiciled foundation focused on that. So because World Shoe is in the shoe manufacturing and sales business, so we've actually set up a specific Africa-led, Africa-focused, and Africa-domiciled foundation, or the Ohonme Foundation, that's actually going to help us manage that whole process of setting up the accelerator, train the shoepreneur, managing that process, and then they can procure the shoes through World Shoe.
That's amazing. And then, so if people are able to help out, go to theworldshoe.com, and then you'll take them from there. You'll shepherd them through the process. How many, like over the next year or 3 years, are you far enough along to set a goal on how many shoepreneurs? So if it gets $1 million, is that 10,000 each, or is it on average $20,000, or how many?
So for every 100, I mean, every 100 you try to raise 10,000 per shoepreneur.
Yep.
Our goal over the next 3 years is actually, we believe that we can go mobilize and galvanize about 3,000 shoepreneurs across Africa. That's our vision. That's our goal. So that's where our business plan is actually leading us to believe that we can go do very conservatively. But we think this could be something that can actually grow very well, because people are looking for opportunities to be able to contribute and be able to not just contribute, but be able to generate revenue, to be able to create even greater impact, knowing that what they're doing is actually helping to contribute to our macro vision of a world with zero shoeless people.
Right. I love that. With zero shoeless people, that'd be 600 million. And then their feet grow. So
Absolutely.
You got
You got to keep, just like our kids, like in America, right? Their feet grows every single year, and people just in Africa alone. Africa has a population of 1.4 billion people. 1.4 billion people. That's projected by the year 2050 to be at 2.4 billion. So 1 in 3 employable person in the world.
Yeah.
Would be an African. So what a market opportunity for us, because people were wondering, why in the world are you going to go put a factory in Africa? Well, but we can't wait on China. We can't wait on the West to solve our problem. When the pandemic hit, they were waiting on the West to provide the vaccines to help us solve. No. Africa needs to be industrialized to create factory that can create the jobs, create the intervention they need to be able to solve their problems. And we want to be at the forefront of that. We want to be able to show the world that some of the greatest innovations of our time can come out of Africa, from 100%. Africa to the world.
What's awesome about that is, so if we fast forward, how fast time goes. Ambassador Ruben Brigady, was on the podcast yesterday. And I learned about some of these statistics I was not aware of. And these people have been born. So it's going to happen by 2050, right? And so when you think like the power of one, I always have this concept of just the power of one. And in this situation, with the World Shoe, like one major entity that can have that impact. So when people look at this industry and see what you've done, it's going to inspire who knows how many more industries and foundational companies that can launch and deliver value, deliver solutions, to advance people and to advance economies.
Well, there's a call to people to look at Africa as an opportunity. Some of the biggest problems in the world right now are there. But with those problems comes amazing, significant opportunities. And I see opportunities every single day. And I'm calling them folks, man, in terms of come see the potential of what you can do. Is it in the healthcare space? Is it in the footwear space? And in our case, we're combining both.
Yes.
Is it in the
it's a great example of
cross sector, right? Yeah. So is it in the food tech space? Is it in the fintech space? I mean, when you look at a population of that magnitude that need all these amazing services. I mean, we recording this podcast right here from Indianapolis, from the great state of Indiana, that has amazing quest and thirst and passion for innovation, for creating solutions that can help revolutionize change the world. Imagine that amazing partnership with Indiana, bring some of their Indiana's figured out how to feed the world.
Right.
What's going to be one of the biggest needs for Africa in the future? We got to be able to feed them. When they walk in the fields, they can't walk barefoot. They're going to need protection for their feet.
Right.
They're going to need our seeds. They're going to need our equipment. They're going to need all this stuff. That's the power of looking at the opportunity of that amount of people and what they'll need to be able to actually survive and thrive in the future.
I love it. I love it. So, what are other ways? We're going to come to rapid fire questions here in a minute. But are there other things that you're working on that we haven't touched on today that people could have an opportunity to get involved with you?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Samaritan's feet still exist,
Yep.
right? So right here in the great state of Indiana, we are still meeting the needs of people. There are still children still going to Title I schools in this country, that the kids still need footwear. They still need love. They still need compassion and showing empathy, and to be reminded that they care. We could become that activation tool that could be leveraged to go serve those kids using footwear as a vehicle to be able to create an amazing impact of compassion on campuses across this great state and across this country. People can connect with us. So corporations right here in Indiana, like, Republic Airways, my dear buddy there, Brian Bedford,
Yep.
they've been doing this for the last almost 10 years. Every year across the country, across all their different stations around the world where their airlines operate, they get the chance to partner with Samaritan's Feet to impact people in those countries. And then we can bring this, now, because of what we have to the World Shoe, we can bring these shoes as what we use to deliver to these kids in the future. Our friends over at Performance Services, my dear buddy, Bill, Bill Godfrey in town, that their family, so many connections here in India. My dear friend, Mitch Daniels, and just to go back to some of the amazing people in the great state of Indiana that's partnered with us, and that opportunity still exists, that you can sponsor footwear for people. You can go with us internationally. You can bring a delegation to go, to our factory. There are skill sets that you can actually help land to us, to our partner, to help upskill the future, shoepreneurs that we're trying to partner with to create all across the globe. I mean, I was joking with somebody at GEC yesterday saying, some of us in this country has forgotten what skills, what abilities that we have that we can share as a gift to Africa to take them to a whole different dimensions. Those are how we can partner, not just through the World Shoe or Samaritan's Feet or the Ohonme Foundation or the World Shoe Forum, whatever it is, but there are many organizations that's looking for activation points and collaboration points to help bring the change that Africa needs. Because if we don't take care of Africa today, there's a future that awaits us.
Yes.
And we can't wait for that future. We got to start now.
Now. I love it. I love it. Well, so some of my rapid fire questions, there's one I always like to ask that I already know what the answer is going to be. But it's, if you could solve one problem in the world with innovation, what would it be?
I want every person on the face of this earth to be able to have access to footwear.
Yep.
Because I think it's an injustice. My dear friend Jay Hine from Sagama Institute, he said, we should be in holy discontent that not on our watch, but in 2025, that we should be able to go to bed knowing that there's somebody somewhere on the other side of the pond or somewhere in the neighborhood that their parents has to make a decision between, do I have food or do I have footwear? We think it should be unacceptable that something that we call a fashion accessory, that somebody in Ethiopia that walks and works in this volcanic soil can lead to a condition called podoconiosis that eats away at the sole of their feet, attacks their nerves, becomes this non-filarial type of elephantiasis, and they suffer from this amazing debilitating disease that if you don't catch it soon enough, you have to amputate the feet, and then you can produce. What impact does that have on the economy? Research shows that for those kind of conditions, that's almost $52 billion that affects Africa from disability-adjusted lifestyle, because they can produce, and when they can produce, they can send their kids to school.
Right.
They can provide for themselves. All of a sudden, whoever thought a pair of shoes?
They can be solved with a pair of shoes.
So that would be the problem. A world with zero shoeless people.
I love that. What is something that that we should stop doing? That we do just because we're human and we like to keep doing the same thing. We're creatures of habit. What's something that we should stop doing?
We should stop, complaining and start doing. Because there are two kinds of people in the world. The ones that say they can, and the ones that believe that they can't. And the ones that believe that they can't always love to complain. and I said, no, don't complain. Get in the game. Those on the sideline. Find a problem in your community and help you answer that problem.
Yep.
You know, somebody chose to come to Africa and inspired a poor African kid in the street of Lagos, at the camp of Lagos, that didn't have shoes. That galvanized and created a ripple effect that's now affected over 12 million people. What problem would you use your gift and talent to solve? Because there are two most important days in every single man's life: the day you were born and the day you find out why. So figure out what your why is.
Oh, wow. The day you were born
the day you find
and
out
the
why.
day you find out why. I have not heard that before. That strikes me kind of deep because I've been on a journey over the last decade or so. And I just got baptized on Easter, by the way, with my son.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And it's just been an amazing journey.
That's awesome.
That you made me think there, Manny. That's interesting. Well, this is absolutely amazing. Thank you for joining the podcast today. So my takeaway here is anybody listening to this, go check out theworldshoe.com. Go check out Samaritan's Feet. And what I really love about this opportunity is you're not only launching a business now to solve problems. You've attacked it from the nonprofit side. You've gotten the community involved. You've gotten companies involved to solve a real problem. But now you've figured out a model to launch another business that will in turn launch thousands of other businesses. That helps. The ripple effect of that is insane. The power of one, that is just going to be insane. And so not only uplifting those people and their families, but it's on a path to put shoes on 600 million people and solve diseases that impact another 1.5 billion, right?
It's amazing.
That is amazing. And it is such an honor to call you my friend. I'm so glad our paths crossed just over a year ago. Welcome back to Indy. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us. And is there anything that I should have asked you that you want people to know that I didn't ask?
You know, I think if there was a patent word for me, is the importance of serving others. My mom taught me a long time ago. She said, service to others emancipates humanity from the dungeon of themselves. That if you want to ever tap into the power of what it means to truly understand what joy is, she said, serve others. Because in that process, you discover who you are. Because when you want to tap into the power of joy, and you can be humble and put others above self, it said, my son, this world would be a better place.
I think there's nothing else that can be said after that, Manny. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And I hope everyone's inspired. I am deeply inspired. And let's stop complaining. Let's start doing. Manny, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me.